Concerns are mounting over South Africa's justice system and its ineffectiveness in handling sexual crimes. Public outrage has intensified in the wake of the hashtag Justice for Gwegwe campaign and the not guilty verdict in the Timothy Omotoso trial. There has been widespread outrage on social media, with many questioning South Africa's efforts to combat the growing issue of gender-based violence. I am now joined by Pelisa Nkomo, who is the board chair of Oxfam. Pelisa, thank you so much for joining us, and a very good evening to you. A sad day, another sad day in South Africa once again when it comes to the fight for GBV. We've seen yet another march to the union buildings. We've seen countless protests as well. But what will it take for authorities to finally get the cries?
I think there are a number of things that need to be done. In fact, I just want to take this time to honor, women of South Africa who still take it to the streets and really send a very clear message that gender-based violence and femicide is actually a political issue, and that it can no longer be a family issue, it can no longer be a community issue, it can no longer be a church issue. It's a political issue. And also the second one is the fact that I think the minister has really come out quite clearly in early days of the judgment that she has asked the NPA to really submit a report on what exactly has happened. Why do we find so many flaws with regards to this case? But I mean, there are many cases of Omotosos, there are many cases of Gwegwe who may have not actually found its way right into the public interest or public attention, as we have seen with their cases. But I think what's really, really clear is that firstly, we have a very strong legislation that really protects the rights of women and children in this country. And it also means now everything else now is left on two critical groups: the police, which are meant to do investigation, and the second one is the prosecuting group, right? And it's becoming quite clearly that both the police, which will then say part of the criminal justice system, you are actually seeing a lot of flaws, either from an investigation perspective, which the issues around DNA has actually come out, but also at the same time, how the prosecution teams are ill-equipped to deal with issues of gender-based violence. But also within that, there's also issues of corruption, by the way, where you pick up that actually members of the prosecution teams are actually sometimes involved in corrupt activities in relation to investigation cases. But there's something a lot more deeper we actually need to really talk about, is this conscious and unconscious biasness that are embedded within our own society. Cultural norms and how you find them expressed into public institutions, where the default position, when people don't know what they are meant to do, they will say, "What were you wearing when you got raped?" Remember, even the questions that Cheryl Zondi were being asked during the prosecution, where she was asked the question, "Did you enjoy it? What was your reaction?" And no one really thinks about what was happening in the 2 years of Cheryl and other survivors were being groomed by this pastor, right? That one of the things that he was doing to groom them and expose himself to them naked. And no one is asking the question on what is the psychological impact of what's happening. So there's a lot that needs to be done in society, because what is actually coming out clear is that the instruments of legislation are actually not sufficient. So meaning that there are personal stereotypical behaviors that we're seeing by people, individuals who are meant to make it sure that they protect survivors. But also at the same time, it's how institutions have been able to move with times, moving in the times in this context, that move with transformation that we're seeing in society. Part of that transformation is to understand that there's a clear legislation unto which they need to conform to, and part of that is to make it sure that they uphold the principles that are embedded into that legislation. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and that work is not only sitting with criminal justice system, it's sitting with families, it's also sitting with communities, that the conversation about gender-based violence has to be an open conversation. We need to start learning the stereotypical cultural practices and norms, and we need to unlearn it consistent with our modern democracy and our constitutionalism.
And you know, as you're speaking about the strong legislation that we do have, but the instruments of legislation not being particularly optimal as well, one wonders then what's the point of that strong legislation? Because what is felt on the ground, where there are many cases of Gwegwes, where there are many cases of Uyinenes and many, many other women and children who we have seen making headlines. The problem seems to come also at the service level of the South African Police Service. Now, if a crime has been committed, a gender-based violence crime against a woman, the place that they go to seek refuge and to get some sort of reporting done is with the SAPS. But just taking a look at the testimonies that came out from Timothy Omotosho's case as well, that some people in the law and judiciary didn't even understand the definition of certain types of rape as well. How encouraging is that then for any survivor or victim to go forward to that first point of contact, which is the SAPS? Are the SAPS recognizing their role and doing enough to try and rectify it?
I mean, the starting point is that, you know, justice delayed is justice denied. I mean, the 31 survivors who came forward to report, you know, the violation they've been experienced, they've actually been denied justice. I mean, this case is coming for long. The sad thing as well is that just a month ago, I mean, one of the key witnesses was gunned down. And so you can already starting to see, I mean, there's also an application of common sense. I don't think any one of us, of course, want to wake up and become judges. But I think you can also starting to see, by the way, that the delay in dealing with this case, the witness that gets killed, and we see this in several cases, by the way, is also an indication that, in fact, the criminal justice system really is failing our people. I mean, the point I actually am making is that you can have strong legislation if the executors of the legislation are still caught into, firstly, thinking that men are entitled to women's bodies. You are actually going to have that challenge. So meaning that they don't understand the concept of body autonomy. For instance, in South Africa, if you want to report a case, you have to physically go to the police station. We have what we call today artificial intelligence. What's wrong with women being able to just send a voice note to a police station and say, my name is Pelisa, this is what I'm experiencing, this is a voice note, this is where I live, this is my situation. And the police can administer that and actually come through. And more often, when women walk into police station, they are told that, particularly on the partner to part, they are told that, oh no, could you not resolve this? Can you not explore alternative dispute mechanisms to deal with this case? So already, you can see that that's happening. So it means that there's a lot of investment that needs to take place. And part of that investment is to actually really train police, both women and men. And I just don't want to discount the fact that you do have police who understand these issues, right? But actually, with the type of caseload and the outcome that we get to see in court, clearly it's a fraction of them who understand that gender-based violence and feminicide is a serious human rights violation. So the second one is to actually make it sure that prosecutors who handle the cases are actually trained to prepare for cases. I mean, in the case of Omotoso, one of the points that the judge makes, which is part of the scathing attack he makes, he says there was no strong cross-examination from the prosecution. But as public, we saw the cross-examination from the legal team of Pastor Omotoso. But also, I also think that the silence of the churches, for me, really concerns me. Because churches are social infrastructure that are meant to remain a voice of reason in society, but also are meant to uphold certain values. But they are completely quiet. Now, you still even wonder whether, in fact, actually, pastors, are we not surrounded by pastors who are familiar with what Omotos was actually doing to those 31 survivors? So there's really, really a lot of work. I mean, for me, one of the things I've been saying is that women of this country must just go and march in Union Building. But not only that, we must actually just close the highways of this country just one day where no one is able to move. And because we're sending a message that we can't live in fear. Now, all of us today, I mean, we have to lock our doors every day because people get raped midday. So you have to lock your doors perpetually. You have to make it sure that when you walk on the street, you must watch your back because you are scared of what's going to happen to you. And the only time that we get to see our male counterparts coming up against gender-based violence, it's when gender-based violence is hit at home. So we really want to call on men of this country to come and support women against gender-based violence. And part of that support is for them beginning to fully understand that women enjoy the same equal rights as they are, and that they are not entitled to women's bodies, and that women have a right to make a decision about their body. They have a right to make a decision about who do they want to sleep with, without being raped or being forced to sleep with someone that they don't know. So in essence, the work of dealing with social norms is the work of all of us. But also media is such a crucial partner, by the way, in doing public education. Schools are such a crucial partner. Churches, I mean, pastors should really be talking about gender-based violence when they go into the pulpit, because they need to be educating their own congregants, both women and men, about gender-based violence.
Absolutely.
You also need to really, really unlearn as well, because I also know that there are women who do protect family members and pastors who commit this type of crime. It's criminal to violate women, and we must start calling them criminals and rapists. And I know that the ministry had started the database of people who are rapists. We must do that. And I mean, the other call that has been made recently is that people who open churches in this country must be registered. They must show basic credentials of theological studies before they can open a church. And that must become mandatory. Because here in this country, people just apply for a church. Within 31 days to 60 days, they can just open a church.
Absolutely.
And that's unacceptable.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for now. But thank you so much, Pelisa, for your insights as well.